Hello water signs Cancer, Scorpio and Pisces. Welcome to the blue super full moon in Pisces. You'll find the timestamps for your rising sign listed below. Hello Cancer rising, welcome to your horoscope for the Pisces full moon, happening on Thursday, the 31st of August at 11:37 a.m. if you're in the southern hemisphere with me. A lot can happen in a month. And this time around, this August, we get two full moons. So if you remember, on the 2nd of August of this month, we had the full moon in Aquarius, and now it's time for Pisces. When there's two full moons in one month, it's called a blue moon. You might know that phrase, once in a blue moon. It's not usual, and so it's something to remark upon. Also, it's not only a blue moon in Pisces, it's also a supermoon. And the reason for that is there's 2 points in the sky called the lunar apogee and the lunar perigee. And they mark out the places in the moon's orbit where the moon is closest and furthest away from Earth. And so when it's right near the lunar perigee, it's much bigger, or it appears much bigger than usual. So I imagine that this is going to be incredibly emotional, and I imagine that we might need to be extra specially careful and kind and gentle with ourselves, not only because the moon will be massive and bringing a further kind of exclamation point to whatever we've been feeling lately, but also because the planet Mercury has stationed Gatorade in Virgo, right directly opposite this moon. So we're in Virgo season now, and pretty much on the same day, Mercury stationed retrograde. That is kind of tough because things can go wrong, and tech gear, I'm looking at my microphone, can fizz out. We can forget to update our software, and we can think to ourselves, oh, my technology is failing me and I can't afford to replace it, so I'm doomed. I'm going to have to throw everything in the bin, forget it, I've failed. That's just one example of what might have been occurring for you. Another way to look at Mercury Gatorades is to be overly careful with how we're communicating, to go over the information that we're being given, and also to kind of check ourselves as far as how we're articulating ourselves to other folks too. It's a great time for revision. It's a great time to sort of double check everything. And if stuff goes wrong, it's really great to remind yourself that Mercury is Gatorade, so you can kind of laugh about it and ease into the idea that astrology is real cool and kind of works and gives us a little bit of context for when there's an upset or when there's a disturbance. Mercury will be Gatorade for pretty much the whole of Virgo season. So they'll station direct, I think the day after the new moon in Virgo in 2 weeks' time. So we've just got to roll with it. We've just got to kind of ease into it, relax into it, and do our best. So along with all of this like huge emotional sort of upswell, it's probably good for us to look at what house that's happening for you, Cancer rising. This is your 9th house. So what we're dealing with at this time is an opposition between your 3rd house and your 9th house, which in Hellenistic astrology was the house of the goddess and the house of God. So it's kind of a push and a pull, or a kind of complementary relationship between our private rituals at home and how we worship, how we take in information and learn it with storytelling rather than with academia, and the more formalized part of that, or the kind of parts where we sort of long or have a craving for philosophy, can happen in the opposite house. So that's where Pisces is for you, Cancer rising. Pisces rules your 9th house of the gods. It rules things like traveling around, expanding the mind, philosophizing, astrologizing. There can be some relationship to organized religion too. So maybe at this time, there might be some kind of harder emotions around that topic for you. There might be a kind of expulsion of anger. Possibly that's an emotion, isn't it? When it comes to Pisces, there's sort of there's something more sort of generous in the empathy about Pisces. It can be overwhelming sometimes, though. When we're working with Pisces energy, there can be a kind of predisposition to dissociate, because the breadth and the depth of the emotions are just too much, particularly with this perigee moment too, the big, big, bright supermoon. The best thing that we can do, I reckon, is to look to some of the mythology. So in astrology, the perigee point is called Priapus, and Priapus was a child of Bacchus or Dionysus, depending on if you want to use Latin or Greek. And they were alone on their mountaintop, and they were gifted physically with an endowment that became an obsession. And so there was kind of a feeling sometimes of never being satisfied, or never having enough, or having such a bank up of some kind of sensual energy, but no outlet. When we look at Priapus in astrology on a birth chart, it can point to sometimes it can point to a part of our lives where we are desperate, we're looking, we're wanting, we're yearning for something. There's something kind of animalistic about Priapus. In some of the nicer stories, Priapus was worshipped, for fertility and for growth and abundance and things like that. There was some great celebrations around kind of, Bacchic sort of feelings. Sometimes when I think about Priapus, though, I do think about that heat at the base of your spine that's just sort of yearning to be expressed, and without an outlet, it can kind of really confuse us and have us really kind of agitated. So maybe these kinds of feelings, agitation and desperation, might be occurring at this full moon for you, Cancer rising. If you're a moon baby, which you are, because the moon does rule your sign. So when we say rule, it simply means that if there was a planet that was going to guide you into your happiness or your soul's rising potential, we'd look to the moon. There's a lot of similarity between the essence of the sign Cancer and what the moon can represent too, as far as that nurturing feeling, that feeling of comfort and care and welcome. If Pisces is mutable water, which means the kind of limitless ocean, the ability to sort of give way to the next season, Cancer's cardinal water, which means an initiation into emotional literacy or emotional care. So somewhere in there, Cancer rising, sometimes your emotions might feel, it's a double-edged sword. It's sort of like they might feel really difficult to combat sometimes, but there's also a feeling of being ready and being able to do so. I imagine that with any double-edged sword, it's always good to sort of register your relationship with yourself and then register your relationship with other folks. So as far as helping other people through a turbulent time with their emotions, or listening to them, holding space, lighting a candle and holding court for someone to download, to unleash their feelings. That's absolutely what you do. That's kind of, you've got all the time in the world to do that. As far as with your own self, that might be a little bit trickier for you to muster. that same compassion for yourself and the way that your emotions do ebb and flow, the best way to surmount that or to build a relationship with your own emotions is to check out the moon. So there's something of like a longing to travel that I'm kind of feeling with this full moon for you, Cancer rising. And maybe not physically, it doesn't have to be like, oh, I want to sort of get out there and, expand my horizons. It feels emotional. It's sort of, there's something about like, I want this, I want the connection. I'm thinking about Priapus now, sitting there alone on the mountaintop, endowed, ready to go. But I think in one of the myths, he killed a donkey. And so, because there was, it's a long story, but they had the eye on someone and couldn't have it. Anyway, I'll backtrack. I'm going to renege on that statement. You're not going to kill a donkey, Cancer, but there might be that, that lingering feeling of longing, and that sort of, it's like that, like insatiable feeling, it's kind of like, oh, and that can be so frustrating when you don't know what you want to, when you sort of are going through the motions in life and, loving life, chinking your little, what are they? You know what I'm talking about. You're trying to be a good person. You're trying to be present, available. You're trying to, be ready to receive what is waiting for you. Sometimes there's that insatiable feeling. You're like, I actually don't know what I need. I don't know what would satiate me. I don't know what would comfort me. And that can get really scary. That can be sometimes a bit of a point of no return, because it's sort of like, well, friggin', I'm searching for some kind of relief. And some of us, Pisces especially, do consume sometimes to get that feeling of relief, to feel it. Pisces knows all too well about that too, about that sort of like to aid the dissociation, to kind of consume. And this could be eating, this could be whatever you do that maybe might be a bit habitual as well. That's to access relief from the feeling of desperation or insatiability. It might be actually really good, Cancer rising, just to just be mindful of what you are consuming at this full moon too. If you're going, geez, do what you like. Do it with intent at the full moon, because there might be something around, like overindulgence is the wrong word, because it's not indulging, you're not indulging yourself. It feels desperate to me. It feels kind of like I just need to find this relief. And I'm getting a bit scared because I keep on going down that road or that road or that road, and I actually don't know what I'm looking for anymore. That might be something that's coming up in this 9th house too, because it does speak about, travel, expanding the mind, gaining knowledge, worshipping the gods, And it's like, well, if I don't know what I want or where I'm going, but I'm just trying to get away from this rising feeling of like agitation, then I think at this full moon especially, it might be great to, whatever you're ingesting or consuming, to do it with intent. Don't just get off your face, is what I'm saying. Something's about to tick over. We've got the Fool at the very end, so we're about to start something new. Are you frightened of starting? Is that what it is, Cancer rising? because we've started off with the Three of Wands, which is kind of, you know, action stations, kind of ready. I can see you sort of rolling up the blueprint and putting it over your shoulder, you know, about to get this thing started. But yeah, it's kind of like everything's caught in my throat too. It's like I'm about to start. Sometimes in the ninth house, we can publish what we know, like if we can sort of like extend access to our knowledge. So maybe you've been working on something for some time and you might feel it's sort of caught in your throat at this full moon. Or I hope that, yeah, look, if you are going to put something out into the world, like absolutely do so. When you put it out, you set it free, don't you? Sometimes, and this is maybe coming from very personal experience of mine, but sometimes we get on that road and we're working towards something, and when it's released or revealed or completed, sometimes that Priapus part of us can be like, oh, I was supposed to feel this relief, and I don't. So what Tarot's saying is that there's a real kind of encouragement and support here for you, Cancer rising, to look at it with fresh eyes, whatever it is. Maybe you're about to hit play on or about to offer, give out into the world, or maybe it is a trip that a journey that you're about to go on. And you've got that feeling in your mind where you're sort of like, gee, I hope this works out, because I don't know how much longer I can keep hope or keep faith, have faith in myself about this. The Page of Pentacles is in the center here. So this is right here, right now. So this is someone that has really great skills as far as getting something off the ground, and as far as like, you know, like staying a while to get it sorted out. The pages can sometimes be a bit wet behind the ears. You know, they can be a bit younger or a bit green. In other readings of tarot, though, they kind of are masters. Sometimes the page, and think about it when you think about, like, you know, kids with like an innate ability or an innate interest or skills in, you know, in this way it's skills in sort of like growing something from nothing. And so sometimes, rather than it being sort of like a condescending sort of feeling, you know, especially if you're sort of older than them or you know, whatever, sometimes the truth of it is that the ones that, yeah, the youth, you know, maybe they're born with it. You know, it's, so what I see is maybe you need some kind of extra like support around this thing. So keep your ear out, see if who I'm describing shows up for you. You know, someone who's kind of like, hello, I'm here. I'm ready when you are. You know, let's get this thing off the ground. I believe in what you've got to offer, Cancer rising. This is what I'm kind of feeling from this Page of Pentacles in the center here. Because you were in a place where you were like, right, okay, finished the last little touches on that plan, and yeah, rolling up the blueprint, let's get started. But yeah, it's something stopped. And you know what, I think that this moon might be a bit of a, you know, a stopgap for everyone. And Mercury, great Gatorade, you know, that kind of thing's going wrong. If we can laugh about it, and if we can sort of have, you know, it sort of instills a bit more patience too. Another thing maybe to remember is that Mercury does rule Virgo, where they are right now. So it's kind of, they're in their home base. And Virgo is an earth sign that is meticulous with the details. So perhaps even if you wanted to use the rest of this Virgo season just to go over and to maybe do like a re-edit before you kind of hit lift off, and then wait and then worry that it hasn't landed or that feeling of relief didn't arrive, then use the rest of this season up until the new moon in Virgo, which will be on the opposite end of the scale. It'll be in the house of the goddess, so there'll be lots more stuff going on locally for you. Go over it again, and maybe go over it and set it down for a while. That might be also a really good idea. From my experience, you know, we're all different. Sometimes the project can become a compulsion. It's what I'm really working on. I'm trying my best to get through that, but sometimes it can be a compulsion at the tax of all else. And so it's a consistent state of hypervigilance, maybe in the body, of like, I'm so focused on this, I've got to get this. I'm sort of grinding my gears to get this off the ground, to get this out there, hoping that when I do, everything will slot into a place and I'll feel a sense of relief. This season isn't the time for that. This season is the time to reacquaint yourself with why you're doing it in the first place, I reckon, Cancer rising. Big love. Hope, yeah, like go super gentle. If you're gonna, you know, do your full moon ritual, and if you're intending on, you know, communing by taking something, do it with intent. Do it with intent. Don't do it to relieve yourself, because that feeling will probably come back tenfold. That's it. You can tip me at buymeacoffee.com/umaruby if you like. I can read your birth chart, so head over to umaruby.com and I'll draw you one up like this, and we can journey through your chart together. I'll be back with you in 2 weeks, and we're going to talk about the new moon in Virgo, and like I think it's the next day that Mercury stations direct, so there will be kind of an opportunity to go ahead, move forward with whatever it is that might be lingering. There might be, yeah, I just feel this sort of like, should I hit send or not? Oh, should I? Is it ready? Oh, I'm actually, the longer that I'm doing this, I'm just not interested. And now I'm losing myself. The abyss of Pisces is fun, can be awesome, can also be really, really scary. So remember that the moon rules you. The moon's your friend, and the moon is protecting you too. So feel that warmth, feel that comfort, feel that blanket. Take care, Cancer rising. I love you heaps. I'll speak to you soon. Bye. Hello, Scorpio rising. Welcome to your horoscope for the super blue full moon in Pisces. This is going to be quite emotional, Scorpio rising, so prepare yourself. Not this reading. I hope this reading will give you some context for the week ahead. There's a couple of things to sort of check off the list of explanations. So first things first, any full moon in Pisces is going to be pretty intense and pretty emotional and pretty trippy. In your chart, it's your 5th house of where you express yourself and create art, and where you deliver your perspective on life on this planet. So it's kind of a spotlight on that area for you. So if you are creatively inclined, or if you are sort of about, you know, sort of making and you know, creating beauty in the world, then this is where we sort of focus on your chart. And in a Pisces full moon, the reason it's called a super moon is because it's right near the lunar perigee point. There's 2 points on in the stratosphere that mark where the moon is closest to the Earth in its orbit and where it's furthest away. So lunar perigee and apogee, or Lilith and Priapus. And so the moon is like very close to the Priapus point on the chart. So there's going to be, it's not bigger, but it feels like it's bigger. It looks sort of a bit bigger because it's a little bit closer to us than normal. So it's one to sort of regard. The third thing is it's a blue moon, and that's because it's the second full moon in a month. That's the basically. So you know that phrase, once in a blue moon? This is kind of, this is the night. Once in a blue moon. Now, Pisces, the sign in tarot, is the moon card. So if we think about the major secrets and what card gets divvied out to whom, Pisces gets the moon card. And you can see that there's two figures here, and they're both in worship. They're both really kind of feeling the energy of the moon. One is a vibrant redhead in a fox mask. The other one is a brunette in a dog mask. And so there is that sort of conversation around what choice are we going to make at this time? Are we going to be domestic and staid and a good boy? Or are we going to be a wild animal? So already like, woo, full on. The other thing that I wanted to talk about maybe is the mythology of Priapus. Now I'm sort of still getting my head around it so I can tell you the proper story, but essentially Priapus was a child of Dionysus / Bacchus, and they were heavily endowed, you might say, physically. I won't tell you, but just look up Priapus and, don't do it at work. The ancient Greeks used to worship Priapus at times of harvest, and there was a lot of kind of connotations to fertility and things like that because of the size of the whole thing. In a lot of the mythology, Priapus was really desperate and unable to gratify the growing urges inside of them. There was something kind of almost like this searching for some sort of relief. And so this is kind of a great way to describe how we might be feeling at this full moon in Pisces. I mean, I love him. I love the sign Pisces. It's a great time to explore and to reach out and to kind of try and build some of those connections with the other side, to get magical and to get spiritual. However, this one does feel a bit tense. It does feel like there's something wanting to come out, but at this time it might be a bit flaccid. Sorry to keep on using these sorts of metaphors, but you understand what I mean. The other thing that we need to remember is that Mercury stationed retrograde pretty much the day of, I think the day after that the sun went into Virgo. So we started Virgo season and then bang into Mercury retrograde. So things like communication need to be gone over with a fine-tooth comb and probably reinforced as far as clarity about what you have to say and who you're saying it to, and if that information has been relayed in a way that's concise and clear. Definitely things like technology can go on the fritz. I nearly lost my microphone and I nearly had a meltdown and thought, oh God, I can't afford to replace it. Damn it. My steez is over. I can't, one thing that I can't communicate the way that I want to communicate. I know that I could just film it on my phone, but I take pride in my work and I want it to sound beautiful and to be relaxing for you to fall asleep to, or however you listen to this stuff. And so without that, and with limited resources for me at the moment, I was sort of like but then Mercury Gatorade reminded me to update my software. And it turns out, because it's a USB microphone, it was the software that needed updating. La la la, that's a boring story. It's got nothing to do with you. It's all to do with me. Let me continue. You can see this is what's happening. This is what's building up. And so if we think about Pisces as well in terms of dissociation, if we think about Pisces can sometimes be the sign that tries to relieve the intensity of our emotions, our feelings with something. Some, habitual sort of behaviors can sometimes show up. So this is kind of this desperation that's sort of, it's like it's a hot feeling in the base of the spine, isn't it? It's sort of like, I want to. And so if this is your fifth house of like self-expression and art and beauty and all of that kind of thing, it does feel a bit like hard to turn over. It feels a bit like we're in the car and we're sort of trying to turn that engine over. So there might be some things that show up for you that might have you cry, or might have you really frustrated, or it might be that your point was misinterpreted as well, and so that might sort of get your ire up, and you might, want to pick up your ball and go home. Don't do that. Listen to this. There's another little story that maybe I wanted to tell you. I haven't told everyone yet, but so you can see it's difficult for me. I apologize. I'm working through it. I'm trying to be as articulate as I can be against all odds. On the 6th of September, so like a week after this full moon, we're going to have to deal with the full moon in the best way that we know how. Have a really great time. Be very mindful of what you're ingesting at this time. Like if you're, out letting your hair down, do it with intent. Do it as an intentional act, rather than trying to escape something, because that will lead to frustration, possibly, and it could lead to some crossed wires. And I don't want that for you. I want it to be a nice experience. If you're going to take a journey like that, then do it with intent. But yes, a week after this, on the 6th of September, Mercury Gatorade will conjoin the sun. So it will be another cazimi sort of like red hot poker moment, this time with Mercury. So there will be a clearing in some kind of feeling of like communication. So in your 5th house, Scorpio rising, this might be the time to sort of, pick up the brush again, or, put out the demo tape, or, like this is the moment, because there'll be some clarity at this. It's murky for this pretty much entire Virgo season. We need to sort of go back and review. But on that day too, on the cazimi, Athena is back in action. So you remember I talked to you about Athena before, the goddess of wisdom and of the action plan. There's one of the stories in the ancient Greek myth is that Athena and Poseidon, or Neptune, were in competition because they were both wanting for Athens to be named after them. And Poseidon was first to sort of display their will, and so Poseidon tamped down their trident, and a font of water came from the town square. People rejoiced until they realized that it was salt water and kind of useless. And so then Athena planted one seed, and an olive tree grew instantly. And so they could have olive oil, they could eat from the tree. And so, of course, Athena won, and that's why Athens is called Athens. That's the mythology. What's happening in the sky for us is that the asteroid Pallas Athena is going to form an exact opposition with Neptune on this same day of the cazimi. So what I'm getting at here Scorpio rising, is that if we can look to our 11th house of our sense of humanity and good friends and good fellowship, and this is where some of these crossed wires will be happening with Mercury Gatorade, like this is the tricky bit. But Athena, the goddess of wisdom, and Neptune, it feels like they're having that little face-off again. And so if we're going to look at Neptune in your 5th house of creativity and self-expression, and then look to our 11th house of our friends and our good fellowship, our community, it might be worth seeing what they have to say and what kind of solutions can come from interactivity, rather than needing to maybe perhaps do all of this alone and feeling this sort of the weight on your back of having to produce or whatever it is that you might be creating or, willing to share, to express. It might be worth having a look at your mates and being like, okay, how can I glean some wisdom from this? Is there an olive branch being handed to me at this time from this sense of community that perhaps I've been not ostracizing myself, but maybe not feeling particularly a part of lately? There may be some emotions that do come up at this full moon in Pisces around the sort of solitary confines of the studio, as it were. So look out, who's offering you this olive branch? How can you work with the energy of Athena in your sense of friendship and community and belonging? And so this is a week after the full moon. So that's just an extra tidbit if you wanted to journey further with Mercury Gatorade. They're going to station direct, I think, the day after the new moon in Virgo. So in 2 weeks, I'll talk to you about that. Yeah, it's like there's no answers. It all feels a bit murky. It does. It feels like something's building, doesn't it? Something is growing inside of us. I hope that you can find a sense of relief. Lord knows I need one. So if we can remember that a supermoon looks bigger and so therefore might have, lunar topics emphasized. If we think about Pisces as being sort of the, limitless limitation of our emotions, as opposed to the Scorpio kind of identity, which might be a little bit more sort of fixed and just as deep as Pisces, just as deep, but controlled. Sometimes for a Scorpio or a Scorpio rising, there is a kind of unwillingness to go there, to go to that vulnerability. So this Pisces full moon is sort of like, what are you hiding, Scorpio? Let it out, cough it up. So if you're going to cough it up, just be mindful of who you're coughing it up to. And look to your mates. Your mates want to help out. Your mates want to be your friend. They want to be kind to you and sweet to you. Yeah, I feel it's like this labored. If you've been going it alone, Scorpio rising, I've got your back. And to continually make something out of nothing and make something out of nothing and look for the good in people and look for the good in life and be optimistic. It's a lot of stuff to hold sometimes. And depending on what kind of creative work that you do, I mean, you're a Scorpio rising, so I imagine it's pretty intense. Like, that's a lot to continually give out. So this 10 of Wands is sort of saying, well, don't build a pyre for yourself with all of these, dead wands. You don't have to be so self-sacrificing in your work. It's Pisces. You can be self-sacrificing in your work, but make sure that there's a balance to that. I see this balance as being someone that can ground you, because I feel that there's sort of like this waiting period. There's this patience that you need to sort of muster again. It's sort of like, I want this to grow. I want there to be, a break in this. I keep on planting and I've got patience and I can wait, but do I have to? I've been waiting a long time to get some relief, and I'm not feeling any relief. I'm feeling really labored. So there's someone that's going to hold you. It feels like a weighted blanket to me, Scorpio rising. So if there's someone in your friendship groups that feels like a weighted blanket for you in the most supportive way possible, not to restrain you, but I sleep with a big old knitted woolen blanket. It's really heavy, and I have to put it on sometimes because I'm sort of like, I can get so caught up in, either inspiration. It doesn't always have to be a negative thing. Sometimes it can be, the boundary seems far away. It seems limitless sometimes with the magic that we can create in Pisces and in the fifth house. But I need that sort of security sometimes. Virgo, the sign in your 11th house of friendships, is really sturdy and really kind of grounded. So if there's someone that you can think of that's like, I've got you, Scorpio rising, I feel like this is awesome, I can see what you're about to get done. Here's your little blankie. Let's have something really warming to eat. Let's have something with like lots of root vegetables in it. Let's ground, and then we can continue this journey into the unknown. Because if you've not done it for a while too, Scorpio rising, there might be some trepidation around giving out again. But I think with this 10 of Wands, it kind of feels like that's kind of a consistent thing for you, consistently giving out. So yeah, I hope that there was a message in there for you, babe. I am trying to be as articulate as I can, but obviously I'm feeling it too, and that's what makes astrology cool. Much love to you, Scorpio rising. I always accept tips over at buymeacoffee.com/UmaRuby. I appreciate them very much. I can read your birth chart at umaruby.com. They look like this. I will draw one out for you and go with you on a journey via Zoom. What else? I'll be with you in 2 weeks and we'll discuss the new moon in Virgo. So we'll get to have a think about your sense of community, what community you belong to, what you hope to achieve, perhaps on behalf or with, arm in arm with your community in 2 weeks. And also Mercury will have stationed direct. So there'll be a sort of flushing out feeling of understanding. Like, oh, okay, I get it now. Okay, great. This is a solution, finally. Yeah, if you're going to take drugs, do it with intent. Be very mindful at this full moon in Pisces. That's all I'll say. Love you. Bye. Hello, Pisces rising. Welcome to your horoscope for the super blue full moon in Pisces. Holy smokes. We've got heaps to talk about, so I hope that I don't talk over time. First things first, the reason it's called a supermoon is because it is hitting the lunar perigee point. So there's 2 points in the sky, or the orbit of the moon around the Earth. One is the point where it's closest to the Earth, and one's the point where it's furthest away. Perigee is closest, apogee is furthest away. So it's going to look bigger than usual. And so with that sort of like size, there will be, extra percentage of emotion to express and to release. I imagine that there'll be more staff in hospitals and in police stations as well at this time, as there always is at a full moon. That's the truth. The reason that it's called a blue moon is because it's the second full moon, a second lunation in the same month. That's sort of the basics of it, because the first full moon we had in Aquarius was on the 2nd of August, and now it's the 31st of August. We've got the full moon in Pisces. So that's part of the explanation for the terminology. You know that phrase, once in a blue moon? That's kind of how we could maybe consider this blue moon in the first house for you, Pisces rising, the house of your soul's rising intention. There seems like a spotlight on you and where you are right now, and possibly some of the difficulty that you've been having in relationships and being able to express yourself or communicate in relationships, to ask for what you need or to indeed know what you need. The reason for that is because we've entered Virgo season. The sun is in Virgo in your 7th house of relationships of the other person, and Mercury had stationed Gatorade retrograde the day after Virgo season began. So it's almost as if we kind of don't get to experience Virgo season this year without Mercury having stationed retrograde urging us to double check or to clarify what it is that we are trying to communicate. It could be quite literal that your technology is on the fritz. I had a very spooky moment, which I hope that it's not affecting me still. My microphone started to glitch and to echo. I was in a reading with a lovely person called Jen, and they patiently sat through this echoing that I couldn't figure out. And then I went to record something and it was doing the same thing. And I thought, oh, my microphone's broken. I can't afford to get another one. It's over. It's over. And I felt myself sort of like disappearing into paranoia or sorrow. I'll be honest with you, a little bit of relief, because I have been I've been trying to work with this, these feelings. In any way, back to what I was saying, all at once, it was all over Red Rover. But I remembered that Mercury was retrograde in my 7th house of my other halves, my loved ones, my clients, my audience, and that I was being asked to review and to update some of my software. And so I did, and the microphone works fine now. I hadn't updated, it's a USB microphone, I hadn't updated on the computer. This is a boring story. Anyway, you get what I mean? It's sort of like, isn't it funny, like when we're sort of running on empty, or we're sort of going down a certain pathway and we're not giving ourselves enough time to sort of step away from that, or we're kind of have all our eggs in one basket. For one thing to go wrong can send us into a tailspin. And this is when astrology comes into play, because then you can go, oh, all right, now I have context for what's going on. Now I can climb out of the rafters, or I can come from the bottom of the ocean and swim back up and review and revise my systems. And so that's what I'm doing right now, and that's what I really hope for you at this full moon Pisces rising. The size of the moon card for Pisces, to remind you, is, sorry, the tarot card is the moon. So there's duality in this card, and there's a way that we can be wild and rabid and run into the hills, and there's another way that we can train ourselves to learn and to see things through. Isn't it funny? You pick up a card, you can read it in many different ways. This is how I'm reading this one at the moment. There's something that's sort of rising from the bottom here, the depths, and that is something that I'm working on, because to be so emotionally strained over a freaking microphone is pretty full on. So that's my lesson. But for you, Pisces rising, it's kind of like there is this feeling of like a spotlight at a full moon in the 1st house. All of this activity in your 7th house of relationships, I would kind of use this opportunity to revise the way that you are getting your message across to those near to you, or revise the way that you're speaking to your loved ones, revise the way that you're getting your message out there as well. Maybe things that aren't working deserve a pivot. Maybe things that aren't working deserve a bit of a spring clean. In the Southern Hemisphere, we're entering into spring gently, anyway. So that's a good bit of advice. The thing that I wanted to say, and I've said it to everyone, I'll say it to you too. It might be a great full moon to be very mindful about what you're consuming and why. And that isn't to say that you need to be a teetotaler or sort of not go there. But I think with this level of intensity, with the size of the moon, the fact that it's a Pisces full moon, the fact that it's a blue moon, it doesn't happen very often. It feels like a pivotal moment for you Pisces rising. So whatever you are intaking, check why. Ask yourself why. If it's a couple of drinks too many, because you're having fun, great, you can let your hair down, awesome. If it's to relieve yourself from a feeling that you can't shake, of dread or frustration, ask yourself if that's the right thing to do. If you're about to, go on a journey and, whatever it is you're going to ingest around this full moon, it's imperative that you are intentional with that action. Really, really, really important. Because Neptune's in Pisces too. It has been since 2012. So this is the long game. What we're about to encounter is an opposition with Neptune and with the asteroid Athena. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Athena too in this reading. This will happen a week after the full moon. So in the mythology, the reason that Athens is called Athens is because there was a contest between Athena and Neptune / Poseidon in the Greek. And they both wanted to be to be the namesake for the city. And so Neptune slammed their trident into the town square, and a great big font of salt water burst forward. And initially people were rejoicing that there was a fountain, water, a geyser of water. Turned out that it was bore water or salt water, so it was kind of useless. And then Athena came, and it was her time to compete. And she planted a seed, and instantly an olive tree grew. And so folks rejoiced. Athens had access to olive oil and to the fruit from the tree, and also, the symbology of the olive branch as well, to a little bit of peace. The wisdom of a peaceful mind, or the wisdom of Athena was like the goddess of strategy in war. And so I like that there's a lot of olive branches attached to her imagery too, because that's the solution that we really need. War games need to end in peace. So this is your first house and your 7th house of relationships. Whatever wires are crossed at the moment, or whatever fucks up, whatever goes wrong in communication with those in your 7th house, I think the week after the full moon, and it's actually the day that Mercury will be cazimi with the sun too, so it's kind of like a moment of clarity twice over. Because as much as we love Neptune, as much as Neptune has a great relationship with Pisces and allows us our impulses to dream and to fantasize and to, get psychedelic, they also can be a bit of a magician, and it can maybe sometimes lead us up a different path that maybe isn't so helpful, especially when talking about things like consumption of substance to relieve ourselves. So who has the olive branch in your 7th house, Pisces rising? Who can you sort of think about in terms of, Athena, goddess of wisdom, who's presenting you with some solutions moving forward? Because that would be a really good thing to ruminate on and maybe write about and look out for. I've got the 2 tarot cards here. I've just got the Queen of Swords and the King of Cups just to help me along with the story of Poseidon and Athena. The jury's out, but you know, you can use tarot like that too. You can, you know, sort of find your own journey there as well. So there is limitlessness to your capacity to feel, to be emotional, to sense, and there's also an incredible propensity for you to dissociate because it's too much. And so what I feel is that this might be on the boil coming up to this full moon, and maybe for the rest of Virgo season, because if you're not in company with the company that you hold, then that can kind of be a little bit selfish too. You're going through some stuff, Pisces rising, and that's fine, that's awesome. That's going to be really valuable in the long run, I reckon. You know, my mind's cast back to Saturn too. The planet Saturn is in Pisces, will be there for the next couple of years. So we're working on a container for all that we have to offer. And who in your 7th house is offering some support as well? That's the question. The points in the sky, the reason that it's a supermoon is because it's really close to the Earth, so it's going to look bigger than ever. So a lot of feelings will sort of show themselves. In astrology, those points, the one that's closest to the Earth is called Priapus. The one that's furthest away is called Lilith. And so when you think about Priapus and the mythology around that character, there is this feeling of, like, you know, endowment, insatiability, sort of drive, intensity, you know, size, and also a real feeling of dissatisfaction and frustration. So that might sort of come up for you as well, Pisces rising. It'd be great to get away from your screens. I know that's a paradox. I'm talking to you through one. You're allowed to listen to me and then turn it off. It might be a great night to get really clear with your Pisces-ness, with your spirituality, with your psychedelia, and hold audience with that. Because I feel this kind of urgency or frustration rising, building. And so let's talk about it, let's work it out, rather than swim away. Because, you know, where are you going to swim to? Okay, so I got the 8 of Swords. There's your anxiety right there. There's your busyness. There's the cage that you've found yourself in. It's okay. It's all right. Pisces rising. It's okay for this to happen. We can unpick this. We can ground you again after this cage of the mind, these thoughts that keep popping up. Sometimes when I think about the cards, I imagine animations of them, and I can see in the 8 of Swords, the swords rising from the earth. You know, it's sort of like, oh, I've trapped myself again. Oh, I'm stuck here again. You want to be here. You want to be self-sufficient. You want to have enough. Now let's face it, Pisces rising, there's really no sort of shame in just wanting to have enough. It's not as if you want to, you know, be the lord of the manor. You just want enough to get by and enough to share. You know, you want that feeling of like accomplishment and satisfaction after the hard work, rather than perhaps the desperation and the dissatisfaction after the hard work. That can be really, really such a tricky place to be when you feel that you're working around the clock and you're working and working and working, but it's just not, there's no relief for you. That that state of anxiety that the body can get into sometimes when you are like low on resources and just terrified that, you know, another bill's going to show up and you're not going to have the money to pay for it. Like, that's awful. If that's what's going on for you, or if that's the sort of like, you know, that's the similar kind of feeling of anxiety, then tarot is saying, the Queen of Swords, and I got the King of Cups. So let's go back to that story that I just told you about Athena and about Poseidon / Neptune. We love Neptune, and we thank Neptune for giving us our imagination, the possibility of our brain, the possibilities of our brain, I should say. There's many of them. We really thank Neptune for informing our dreams and for coming to visit us there, and for the magic that we're so capable of. Pisces rising, we thank Neptune for that. It's awesome. We also can be so grateful for Athena, for her wisdom and for her reliability. And if there's an olive branch that's being offered to you from Athena in your 7th house that bears some form of solution or some form of conversation even, you don't have to look over there to see if someone else can solve the mess, but you can definitely look over there for some guidance or even some strategy. Athena was the goddess of strategy as well as wisdom. So perhaps rather than holding everything inside, holding it all in the body, definitely this full moon, like freaking scream like a banshee, let it out. Like you've got my permission to be the redhead. Like, go for it, be a fox, be a cheeky fox. Howl. The week after, strategize. You don't have to be like, yeah, with all of this stuff, like you don't have to sort of like, I would be reluctant for you to feel beholden or feel constricted by the astrology. The only reason that I do this stuff in the first place is to provide us with some context for our life and what might be happening for us internally can sometimes be eased with a 15-minute, maybe 20-minute, I've gone over, conversation. And it's just through analysis and comparison that I've found that astrology is just the most incredible tool for self-regulation, because it does provide us with some context for our lives, some comfort when it's delivered in a certain way, and also, you know, the stats check out. There's something about, I'm on this warpath of learning more about the, you know, the Greek mythology. Two things I want to say before I go. Sorry, I know I've gone over. I've been really into it and really like sort of absorbing it and really fleshing out my knowledge and realizing, you know, that I actually know quite a bit. Like I've been doing this since I was a kid, sort of learning about the ancient mythologies. One bit of information that I came across is that as far as like the sort of academic side or like the literary texts, you know, all of the stuff by Homer, by Plato, all of the sort of, you know, the great tomes of philosophy that have been translated over the years. The Greeks themselves didn't touch that stuff. They couldn't read, they couldn't write. It was irrelevant to their life. The reason that the gods were kept alive is because of conversation, because of storytelling, because of talking about it. So there might be something in there for you, Pisces rising, about your level of perceived intelligence. You don't have to crack any kind of code. You can feel it. And if you want to work with the gods and the goddesses, the simplest way to do that is to talk to them or to thank them. Maybe this full moon in Pisces might be a really lovely evening for you to have with Neptune, you know, and say thanks. Thank you for the ability to dream. And then you can say thank you to Athena too. Say thanks, mate. Thank you for the wisdom and the clarity of the mind that I have now, and for these beautiful relationships that you're aiding me, these solutions that are coming my way. Can't remember what the other thing was that I wanted to say. It's gone now. That's it, Pisces. It's a big one, I know, and it's, yeah, like, we'll be right. We'll be right. Dive deep, but keep your floaties on, or just keep yourself, you know, tethered to shore. And yeah, if you wanted me to read your birth chart, then I can draw you one that looks like this, and we can go through it together. I accept tips over at buymeacoffee.com/umaruby. So if you'd like to throw some money in the jar, that would be very much appreciated. I'll be with you in 2 weeks, and we'll talk about the new moon in Virgo. So that will be the day before Mercury stations direct. So there will be some clarity that we get to look forward to in regard to the way that we're relating to people. And a new moon is the night where we get to cast our spells and make a wish upon a star. So when it comes to intimate connection, when it comes to client relationships, when it comes to that sort of stuff, you can ask for something there. You can work with the energy of Virgo and get meticulous and write ourselves a wish list. So yeah, I wish I could remember that other thing I was going to say, but it doesn't matter. In and out. Take care, Pisces rising. I love you very much. I'll speak to you in 2 weeks. Bye.